These are real world issues. These are real world numbers. Not saying that people are numbers, but we can use the numbers to help people. And I come from a background that fell woefully below the federal poverty line. I've seen firsthand how talent is equally distributed, but opportunity is not. Only 18% of small businesses understand the data that they're sitting on top of. How do we educate community or small business owners on that modern data strategy? A big myth is, one, AI can solve everything, and that, all data is good data. Not all data is dependable. And that's coming from a data engineer that's actually building data systems and data pipelines.
We live in a world overflowing with data, but not everyone has equal access to understanding it. And when information isn't accessible, power becomes uneven. If you've ever wondered who data is really for, or how technology can serve people instead of systems, or how information can be a tool for equity, then this episode is for you. DeiMarlon, known as the data guy, is on a mission to make data human, accessible, and useful. And today, we're talking about what that actually looks like. Thank you, Brother D, for joining me on this couch, my man. Appreciate you getting here. And I always like to start off with what actually got you to this couch. Your earliest Elite Collective memory, or when we first crossed paths, and just kind of been just around, like seeing you at event, seeing me at event, whatever, ever since. Sometimes on purpose and sometimes random. But always like to start with what got you here.
I would honestly say community, and that'll be our conversation, a topic of our conversation throughout what we talk about. But it was in community that I met you, and, still to this day doing community events, and be it on the headshot side or actual equipment set up for the event. There's a multitude of things that you all have done, right? And just my working community as well. And so this takes us all the way back originally to my work with the Urban League, being on the board for the young professionals there. And then even now with my work, part of the board with the Central District Community Preservation and Development Authority. I'm the treasurer there. You still, right, are taking our headshots. You go on the McKinney Center website, right? And those headshots are done by Elite Collective. So I definitely feel like that, like we started in community, and still to this day, we are riding with and for community.
Yeah, no, I love that. And I appreciate how you're on literally every board.
Not everywhere.
I don't know if you just get a mailer. They're like, hey, you're good. Can you join our board? I love that. But I mean, that's something to be said where your voice is valued. With you, what I have seen from my humble opinion and from my perch is your authentic just engagement. Like I see you, like not even knowing what your background was. Like it took me a while to even figure out what you do, where a lot of people lead with like, here's my business card, let me sell you this or sell you that. And it was just more of like, man, what does this guy do? He's everywhere doing all the things and wearing all the hats, right? Whereas, it's like, all right, he's setting up the snack table for this meeting. Not sure if he's a caterer, or that it turns out it's like, nah, he's the data guy and can bring so much to this conversation. But it's also just grounded in just like your love of community, which is dope. So it's like, it's not just like technology jargon. And
For sure.
I've seen you be able to try to, and we'll go into that a little bit deeper, but try to make these things accessible, right?
Yeah.
But it's still rooted in, I love how you always got the tea of whatever is happening in entertainment, in politics, and all the stuff. But then, also know what's going on with AI and all that kind of stuff. So you're definitely the type of folks that are needed and should be treasured in community. So.
Yeah, and I'm a firm believer in, getting in where I fit in. And, my place, I feel like in community has always sat at the intersection of, technology or data or, whatever those systems, right? Whatever those kind of issues are. And, I'm a processes person. So sitting at the table, really being able to map out what that is, architecting out solutions. And so I feel like, in these conversations or on these boards and in things of that nature, it translates very well to what I'm doing day to day, right? And how are we building out these data systems, right? And implementing them for social impact impact for good. So I'm super excited to be on the podcast, and glad you're having me.
Yeah, no, for sure. So first off, I just want to kind of start off with like, how did this mission around data accessibility first take shape for you?
Yeah, and I have to be a little bit authentic here, right? I'm sitting on this couch, right, in a Gucci scarf, and my background is nowhere near that, right? I come from a background that fell woefully below the federal poverty line. I was raised by my grandmother, $776 a month on like Social Security that she was getting, disability check, and $126 in food stamps, right, in Indiana. And so like I've seen firsthand how talent is equally distributed, but opportunity is not, right? And so for me, it's how do we provide that opportunity, but first be able to realize what the disparities or the lacks that exist around that opportunity is there. And so for me, using data as a tool for social impact, using data as an identifier, right? As, hey, these are real world issues. These are real world numbers, right? Not saying that people are numbers, but we can use the numbers to help people, be it in housing, be it in workforce, be it in economic development, right? Small businesses, whatever that is. And so for me, it was growing up with those struggles, seeing firsthand, and then really having to map out my own opportunities. Education was my way out. And so I'm a firm believer in being able to provide access on the education side, right? Which is why we've extended our education arm and really pride ourselves in teaching community around AI and data and systems and tools. And so, yeah, I would say it's been my background. It's been, where I come from, and then being able to see the inequities and how do we then attack that, right, through the data,
No, I love that. And there's something to be said, for authentic voices and more importantly, credible messengers, right? Folks that when they talk, it's not just coming out the side of their neck. It's not just a talking point. You're like,
Right.
okay, I can relate. Like we know what block cheese is. We understand that concept, and it still tastes good on chips inside the microwave for 30 seconds. But that's for a conversation for another day. I had a similar journey through photography where when I first started in Seattle in 2002 doing photography, I could not find a lot of hands that could pull me up. I found a lot of closed doors, and unfortunately from community of like, oh, I'm coming to take something that's theirs, right? And for me, it's like, I think about it now, 20 some years in, I could have made you so much money if you would have just, you know what I mean? Instead of trying to block me, I had to figure out a way around. But for me, that was always a chip on my shoulder to one, make it without, but
Yeah.
then at the same time, crack open this door, or if it was closed for me, I crack it open, but then I'm gonna bust it down for the ones that
Yeah.
come behind me. So if it took me 2 years to do it, I want the next person to be able to do it in 6 months,
Right.
right? In
Right.
18 months. Like, how could we shorten that curve? And I have a big passion on education, 'cause I think, like you said, it's universal. And I'm just also a firm believer, like, man, what's for me is for me.
Yeah.
Like, however I do it, my sauce is my sauce. You can't do it the same, but I'll give you all the tools and you figure out what works for you.
Yeah.
And you gravitate those folks that you gravitate towards, and there's enough for everyone. There's so much more we could do together than staying in those silos and just trying to go it alone.
Right.
So I think that's why we're a bit of kindred spirits and end up being at the same places, because we come at it from different angles, but for the same purpose.
Right.
So I love that.
And we can all be at the table and eat well, together
Well,
at the
come on.
table. I feel like that, that also affects our community, just the scarcity mentality, right? That, you have to get yours and then go off in, your silo, but that's not the case. What I've found is that we are stronger together, right? Myself trying to go after, a multi-million-dollar grant is great, but when I have 3 other organizations to where we can then come together as an alliance and go after that funding, it's even greater, right? For example, the Department of Labor just released funding, $98 million to upskill 16 to 24-year-olds in AI, right? And they just released the funding. Who did I call? I called Eddie Rye with the MLK Gandhi initiative. I called, a few different people just just around the funding and how we can come together and partner on that. And so I do feel like that we are stronger together in numbers, right? But again, how do we make the way for community, right? Getting back to education and really ensuring that we have access to this for community as well.
No, I love that. And I know you had talked a lot about professionally on your website and stuff like that. There's a lot of talk about democratizing data,
Hmm.
right? And I know another mission for you is to like make data accessible for people. So just even that statement, right? Can you explain it a little bit for folks that, like what does that mean to you? How does that show
Yeah.
up in real life?
Well, I feel like it's twofold, right? One is on the business side and making data accessible for better business decisions and better business outcomes. And then there's making data accessible on, community side, right? And that Black people, Black and brown people are typically the subjects, right? And oftentimes our data is being harvested from community with these organizations and corporate companies or state and local entities. And so for me, it's really an understanding of on this stat, right? Only 18% of small businesses have a modern data strategy. Now, what does that mean? That means that only 18% of small businesses understand the data that they're sitting on top of, right? A lot of businesses have systems. They may have a CRM, they may have a POS system, right? Or whatever that may be. But do they truly understand the data that they're sitting on to make better decisions for their client? And so what we focus on is how do we educate community or small business owners on that modern data strategy, how you're bringing data in, how you're storing, how you're processing, and then how do we visually tell that story so then you can get more funding. In today's time, especially with Trump, cutting funding and things of that nature and in many different areas, how do you better tell the story of the funding that you've received? And that goes beyond just counts and KPIs, but also moving into impact and long-term impact. But in order to track that, you need the systems in place. And so when I talk about democratizing data or access to data, I mean making it accessible for small business owners to make better decisions for their business, but then also how do we make data not a second grade conversation whenever we're talking about it from a community perspective and the data that we're collecting from community, right? Right now we're seeing that with tribal organizations, right? And Black and brown communities and things of that nature. And so, yeah, I feel like that it's definitely two sides to it. And what we've kind of training even community on the data sovereignty aspect, right? When you talk about data sovereignty, there's a lot of state and local issues on that to where we don't have policy in place right now. But again, it's educating community on the type of data that you're giving out, right? When you accept terms and conditions on websites, right? And the information that you freely give, what is personally identifiable information and things of that nature, and really being able to take time with community on that.
I love that. And what do you see as like the biggest disconnect between like the data professionals and the communities that the data actually represents?
The biggest disconnect in what was that?
With the data professionals, like you said, like there's a lot of people. Like I think I'm probably one of those. What is it, 18%? So I'm one of those 82% that doesn't understand the data that I'm sitting on the way that I should to be able to make those decisions. I make a lot of gut decisions. I make a lot of I think this will work decisions, and then 3 months later, I'm like, I should have probably looked a little bit deeper into that data. So there's us, the data that the community represents, and then there's folks like you, and I would imagine there's not a lot of folks that look like you in your industry. So just the data professionals as a whole, that disconnect of, because I love what you're talking about, but it's like, why are we at 82% that don't know? Because there's probably a disconnect, and what can we do about that? I mean, besides cloning you and and doing that, but just kind of talking through that disconnect. There might be other folks that are in your seat where like, man, I understand this. Why doesn't everyone else do it? And they're throwing, their soda at the computer all day. But there might be a thing of like, man, have you reached out to your local chamber or you're this or you're that, and make yourself accessible to people and just kind of figure out, I feel like you've navigated an interesting thing where you've implanted yourself in different pockets of community to be able to share. So just kind of want to talk through that disconnect.
I like to say all the time that I went from corporate to community. In that, literally leaving corporate, I was at Amazon Web Services for some time, left corporate, and then really was able to ingrain myself in community. And I talk about them separately, but they should not be talked about as separate things. And I feel like because I was at Amazon, I had the Black Employee Network, I had, kind of just trying to make my way in corporate. And then I had my few Black people there in corporate. I will say that as far as data engineers are concerned, I'm one of 2%, right? And as far as Black data engineers, there's 2% of us across the nation. And so I would say, getting comfortable in that place was one thing. And then having to leave corporate to really become part of community. And so for me, the disconnect is, one, how do we train and upskill more people in these fields, right? Which is something that we've, are doing, right? And having interns and things of that nature. But then also, how do we create curriculum or create training and things like that for community members as well? And so we've been able to co-create curriculum with like Seattle colleges and others as well. But I feel like even just within the data industry, right, we're one of 3 Black data firms, right, that's in the Washington area. And so I feel like, again, it goes back to how are we training and upskilling people in these fields and equipping them with these tools, right? Not everybody's going to be an AI engineer or data engineer, don't get me wrong. But again, how are we training and upskilling just everyday workers in these skills that are going to save them time, right, for their business as well?
No, I love that. And I think one thing that leads me to my next question is, what's a myth about data that you wish more people understood?
A myth about data that people understood. I would probably say that all data is good and reliable. And the reason why I say that is because you can hear numbers, right? And stories can be told around things that, may not be true. There's been fudged numbers with our administration. So not all data is dependable. And that's coming from a data engineer that's actually building data systems and data pipelines. And so a big myth is, one, AI can solve everything. But again, that AI comes from the data that it's being trained on, and that, all data is good data. And that's not the case.
Yeah, no, I know that firsthand from, having fun when AI was first dropping and just like, oh man, it's so cool. And then you start to run into these things of like, wait a second, I know for a fact that's not right.
Yeah.
And put in there like, I think this might be off. Oh, good catch. I'm like, okay, AI.
Right.
You are not perfect. And that's okay. But like you said, people need to still understand it to a point where it can be a tool for you, but not a replacement. That's one thing I feel a lot of people just lean in too much, where you're reading emails and reports and different things where it's like, I can tell that this is AI. This has none of your voice, none of all the things, right? And it's like that disconnect where it's like, we don't want you to be less human. We just want you to be more efficient, stuff that's repetitive, things like that nature.
And small businesses wear multiple hats, right? And that's another thing. It's like, you're so focused on the business and the business itself. Like the last thing that you're worried about is like the tech or the systems, which that should be the first thing that you're worried about. And so I feel like too, on the education side, when we talk about that, really making the training accessible. You ask business owners now, you ask just everyday people what AI is, and you'll get 30 different responses on defining what AI is. And so I feel like the first step is really just the foundation. What is AI before you can get into adopting, doing prompt engineering and putting things in there to try to get outcomes and all of that stuff. I feel like that businesses just need to have an understanding of what AI is, how it's applicable to their business, and how it's currently being overlaid with their current business processes, right? A lot of businesses are either using G Suite or Microsoft, right? there's AI that's already embedded in that can save you a lot of time, right? Some people may be using QuickBooks or Salesforce or whatever that is. There's AI that's overlaid or AI augmentation that exists, right? To where you don't have to go and build AI systems, right? But you can learn exactly what AI is and then be using it in your day-to-day
No,
processes.
I love that. Those are definitely things where I look at every day, where things that need to get done, and how can you utilize those tools, and does it make sense? And then I know a lot of folks as well where sometimes those tools might not be right for you right now,
Right.
where they're like, oh, this is what I thought I needed. And it's like, you barely even have the input to even put into a QuickBooks to get your money's worth out of it, right? Those
Right.
kinds of things. That's why it's good to talk to someone like you and see what's a good fit, what's a good
Right.
system for you. But one thing I want to tap back into, you had talked about data and then how stories can be told based on data, good or bad. And kind of I think we've had the opportunity to cross paths a lot, and even, talk about how we could do more together with that marriage of data and design, or data and storytelling,
Mm.
and how they can benefit each other, where it's like you can't have yes, you can have fictional stories and they can be amazing, but to have true impact, you need to have stories that are rooted in truth, in real numbers. So it's like you need to have that research, you need to have those things. And then on the flip side, it's like, unfortunately, we're in a day and age where people are not reading white papers as they used to.
Yeah.
And it's like, how can I make this data interesting, accessible,
Yeah.
and have it's like, do you want to be right, or do you want, or I guess I always say, how bad do you want to be right? Where it's like, man, if they would just read this, they'd
Yeah.
be fine. Like, okay, can we meet them where they're at?
Yeah.
Where can that bridge be? But I'd love to get some of your insight on kind of like how those two worlds can kind of blend. 'Cause I feel like you have a very unique mindset on that.
Planning a milestone birthday, a high-impact gala, or an intimate wedding? At Small Patrol, we don't believe in one-size-fits-all. We provide a range of tailored creative solutions designed to fit the unique energy of your celebration. Ready to book? Click the link in our bio to view our full-service menu and secure your date.
Unfortunately, we're in a day and age where people are not reading white papers as they used to.
Yeah.
And it's like, how can I make this data interesting, accessible,
Yeah.
and have it's like, do you want to be right, or do you want, or I guess I always say, how bad do you want to be right? Where it's like, man, if they would just read this,
Yeah.
they'd be fine. Like, okay, can we meet them where they're at?
Yeah.
Where can that bridge be? But I'd love to get some of your insight on kind of like how those two worlds can kind of blend. 'Cause I feel like you have a very unique mindset on that.
Yeah, people don't read. People do not read like they used to, especially with social media, right? And just consuming things at such a fast rate. And so, yes, how do we tell the story and marry both the qualitative and the quantitative, right? And so what I really love with the Elite Collective and what you all do so well is capturing the stories, right? So it's one thing to sit on the data, and again, not ascribing the numbers to the people, but how do we use the numbers to help the people? And so again, like we can sit on data all day and show that through a dashboard or whatever that may be, but it's the stories behind that, the impact of those dollars going into community, or of that housing assistance that happened, or of that job that was gotten from that workforce program or whatever that is, that are the true story, the impact, right? That really shows the impact. And so I really feel like there's a way in which you marry the showing and the telling, right? And again, how do we limit people? Because again, people are not reading. We focus on dashboards, right? So we do have white papers and things of that nature, but how do you visually tell that story? And then much like the visual aesthetics of like the qualitative side as well. So there's a lot to that, and really being able to marry both. And what we've been successful with is sitting down with individuals, architecting out and understanding, okay, what systems are you currently using? How can we then understand your goal and then work backwards from that to ascribe a dashboard that then can go before funders or, your executive board or whoever that is for reporting purposes.
It's so true. A lot of times I meet people where they think, one thing is going to be that magic bullet or whatever. And it's like, it's a holistic approach.
Yeah.
Like, if you don't know where you've been, you can't know where you're going.
Yeah.
Like, dig into your data, understand your data, work with folks that can help you understand it if you guys don't have capacity. And then same thing on the storytelling. It's like, okay, it's one thing to, get the grant and serve the people. But then if you're not telling your story,
Right.
the likelihood of you getting that grant again is going to drop tremendously.
Right.
And if people can really benefit from the thing that you're doing, it's almost like you're doing a disservice to yourself and the community by not tooting your own horn. And a lot of it, we would just kind of raise that way where it's like, we don't want to be boastful. We don't want to be prideful, but it's like, we're at a point now where our folks are falling behind. Like, we need to let them know, like, yo, we got resources over here.
Yeah.
This organization is dope. They'll give you training. They'll help you get your first house, whatever it is that organization is doing. But it's like, again, when you just can marry those real numbers that folks can't go on and, there's always someone that's trying to tear you down. Like, nah, we got 100 people, loans to get their first house, or we fed this many folks, or, whatever it is that your org does, real numbers doing real impact, and then have those authentic voices and those credible messengers and that storytelling to help, feed the machine.
I think of an example right now. I'm working with Dencham, and Dencham is a
amazing.
CDFI.
I love those guys.
Right? They're amazing. Shout out to Dencham. They're a CDFI, a community development financial institution, and they provide loans to community, low interest loans to community and access to capital, right? Something that our businesses definitely need. We always talk about that access to capital. And so I've been working with them on an internal and an external facing dashboard that shows both KPIs and impact, right? So the impact of those CRP dollars, the impact of other funds and things like that they're associated with, and the flow of those dollars into community. It's great to visually show that as well, but now we're marrying that with the stories that they've been able to get from community on the impact of these loans and access to capital as well. And so I do feel like, yes, the more that we can marry the two, it just amplifies the story that much more, because yes, the numbers are great, but they can't sit alone without the personable stories. And then the numbers are great to marry with the personable stories, or the stories themselves to get to, as you said, to get more funding. So it's just an example there in community.
I love that. My next question was actually going to be, what collaborations or partnerships excite you right now? It sounds like Ditcham's one of them.
Yeah.
Is there another partnership or collaboration that is exciting you right now?
Yeah, there's so many. Honestly, like Carlos, it has been such a blessing. Like, just the amount of work that has been coming our way. Partnerships with Workforce Development Council and building out their whole data system. Finished that work up with Jeremy Warren, the Chief Impact Officer over there. Also, the work that we're doing with FIFA. I'll get into that in just a moment. Also, my partnership with Seattle Colleges. Seattle Colleges chose the data guys as their kind of curriculum creator
right.
to come into their post-secondary program and actually build out the curriculum to teach an upskill workforce in AI. And so we've created a 4, an 8, and a 12-week program, and partnered with Seattle Colleges and the workforce team there with Dahlia and Mike. And so super excited about that, because now I can take that curriculum to Indiana as well. And we bought a building back there, and expanding with Goodwill and Community One and all of the partnerships back there. So I feel like there's a lot of things going on, but they're all positive and in a direction of growth and scaling for the business. And so I'm super grateful right now. And as they say, right, my cup runneth over right now, and so it's truly been a blessing.
That's amazing. And I'll give you a moment to tell us what fun things are happening with FIFA.
Yes. So
Out of
FIFA.
30,000.
So a couple of things, right? So we actually built out a model, an economic impact model. We talk about FIFA has $929 million that it's bringing to the area, but how are we tracking those dollars going into community? And so we've done that with Workforce Development Council and their $67 million that they steward into community for workforce funding. We've done that with like CRP tracking. We've done that with DINCHM tracking. We've done that, right, in flows of dollars going into community. And so essentially we created Sportonomics, and Sportonomics is an economic impact model that focuses on mega sporting events. And so how do we track the flow of dollars going into community? And so the Data Guys has been now the de facto partner for Shoreline, North Seattle, Soto, Pioneer Square, and these are BIAs. And then Tacoma, Kent, right, we formed a partnership and a mutual data sharing agreement to actually measure before we can get to impact and tracking those dollars into community. There's a readiness component, right? I talked about that earlier, right? Are businesses even ready to receive funding, right? And so there's a readiness framework that we co-published with the Office of Economic Development and then also with the BIAs, and then are using that to actually measure to what extent businesses are ready for FIFA. And then if not, how do we get them the services that they need, be it in technology, marketing, operations, whatever that is. From that, now actually tracking the flow of those dollars into community. So we have our first big session with Shoreline and North Seattle, and we've been able to have success in partnering with the BIAs, the Offices of Economic Development, and the Chambers of Commerce in the different regions to be able to make this a success and be their data partner. So there's that side. And then personally, right, I have been volunteering, I got into the tryouts for the volunteer program to hopefully be a FIFA volunteer and take my skill sets and what I'm doing with data and technology to the main stage and actually be able to work with FIFA on that. And so out of 35,000 applications, they chose about 6,000 of them to come back. And then of those 6,000, they're only accepting 3,300 of them. So hopefully I'm one of those 3,300.
Let's go. Putting the good vibes out there. Yeah. Then we can live vicariously through your live on social.
Hey, and if I get an extra ticket, I know who to give it to.
Let's go. No, that's amazing. And just like you said, just to be able to approach and take advantage of, we talk a lot of things about being vouchable. That was something that someone has shared, Michelle Lane Raymond, on one of our earlier episodes, that she had spoke our name in rooms we weren't in.
Yeah.
And I asked her, what even led you to be able to do that? She's like, because you were vouchable.
Yeah.
Like you are, you always show up. You're a professional. You did your homework. You paid your dues, all the things, right? You show up on time, all that stuff. So I knew if I put your name out there, you wouldn't make me look bad. And I think that's what stops a lot of things of folks just not willing to speak our people's names in those rooms. Some of it be some hating, but some of it is internally we gotta look in like, man, are we vouchable?
Yeah.
And it's dope. Like every level I've seen you guys, it's like the professionalism is there. It's just the access, right? It's just the opportunity where you excelled literally at every level where, like you said, it might start with a smaller community, smaller organization. But for you, it's still like, look, I need to look at your data. I need to find out, what are solutions? How can we, fix this problem, these challenges, whatever. And then it's just like, okay, cool. Now we're going to be working with the Department of Economic Development, City of Seattle, higher scale, but the same thing, right? That you're doing, and you're still able to do it at a high level. So now we're super excited to see you guys on the world stage with FIFA, and excited to see where it goes from there.
Yeah, it's really been a blessing. And I do want to note too, to what you said with the model, right? Really, because we're engineers, right? And we build systems for other people. So it was really something for us to be able to take the time and build this, right, for the Data Guys and serve as a model, not just for FIFA, right, but for the NFL, for Super the Olympics, Bowl, for all of these things, right, and how we actually measure the flow of those dollars into small businesses. And believe it or not, historically, it has been detrimental for small businesses, these mega events coming, right? And these over preparation that small businesses do and then the people are not coming, right? For example, the Super Bowl promised $500 million, right? Of that, 2% went to small businesses of that $500 million. And so my thing is how do we understand the flow of those dollars? And then if they're not reaching small businesses, right? One, how are we making line items in the legislative side of things for readiness, right? And getting businesses ready for this, because some businesses don't even have a POS system, right? Let alone marketing and listed on Google. But then also line items for these businesses as it pertains to impact, right? Because in my personal opinion, I don't feel like the $500,000 for community engagement was enough, right? While you have University of Washington getting $18 million for renovations on, their stadium and things of that nature, right? Or Gonzaga getting $250,000 for renovations to their stadium, right? And so I do feel like that we need to better understand the impact of these dollars and who they're reaching, and then better tailor line items accordingly for our small businesses.
I appreciate that. Yeah, no, that is for real. So lastly, we'd like to end with our quick fire round. So quick questions, quick answers, and we'll get you out of here. What's your favorite data visualization tool?
Power BI.
Okay, all right. Shout outs. We'll put a little link. If you click here, he gets a little something.
Right.
A tech tool you can't live without.
A tech tool that I cannot live without? My phone?
I was about to say your phone. Dream data project. I feel like FIFA might be it.
Yeah.
You're already living your dream. What's the one after that?
Let's say that.
What's next? Where's that going to propel you to?
Yeah, so this is, and I'm thinking big here, right? And this is like the announcement on this podcast.
Come
right?
on.
I see, like, when we talk about readiness, there's the data side and system side and technology side as well. But we haven't even began to scratch the surface on the legal side to that. And so for me, in sitting down with businesses, architecting out solutions, building systems, understanding data privacy, data sovereignty, all of these things, a data project for me, or I guess the next stage around this, and this is probably 5 to 10 years down the line, would be the Data Guys LLP. So actually opening a legal practice that focuses in data sovereignty, right? Technology implementation, whatever that is. And even just like contracts. Small businesses are struggling with just contracts, right? And so, yeah, I will be going to law school eventually, right? But after all of this with FIFA and being able, and who's to say Sportonomics, I feel like can really take off. But you asked me outside of FIFA. But my goal is Sportonomics, right? And really being able to take that be the system. We either sell that or make it a marketplace that's readily available for community or for, business partners to access data around FIFA, around NFL, around the NBA, right? And actually showing the impact or the flow of those dollars into the different communities. That is like in the now, and then 5-10 years down the road would probably be the Data Guys LLP.
I love that. What's the most underrated skill in tech?
The most underrated skill in tech. Oh my goodness. Underrated. I would probably say, so when you say underrated, like it's just like undervalued, or like it's...
Yeah, most people don't think about it, someone like, being really good at math or being really good at tables or whatever might be something that everyone acknowledges. But, sometimes, for me, the first thing that popped in my head would be communication, where I feel like being able to talk to non-data people about data is underrated.
Yeah, I would agree with that. Honestly, I feel like you get a lot of technical people in the room and they're always focused on how do we get this product to market without thinking of the social and ethical ramifications. And for me, having a liberal arts background, right, I majored in biology and English and minored in neuroscience and Spanish. And so and then ended up in technology. And so my thing is like, again, that left brain, right brain activity, being able to not only think about the tech, but how are you communicating that and ensuring that it's beneficial to those that are going to be using it. Yeah. So I would say most underrated would probably have to be those soft skills in tech for
I
sure.
love that. In one word, the last one, in one word, what does access mean to you?
Opportunity.
I love that. I love that. Thank you for spending some time with us, man.
Yes.
Reminds us that data isn't just numbers.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? It's narrative, it's opportunity, it's power, reclaiming all of that. And then when information becomes accessible, right? I feel like the possibilities just expand. I mean, you can't really get around that. And I love how you shared your own story of, where you started, humble beginnings, and where you're at now, and being able to understand, what that could be. And a lot of it was, like you said, through education. And education is really just access to stuff outside of your lived experience, knowing that there could be something more that's on the other side. And again, if today's conversation shifted the way you think about data, definitely share it with someone that needs access.
I want this podcast as well to, it's for community as well. But, if there is somebody out there that's listening or looking at this that is a young person that is, curious about what's next or thinking about what's next, definitely think about technology, right? I want to put that in there because for me, coming from my background, I never thought that I would end up in corporate America, right? I literally went from ghetto housing is what they like to call, right? To a shotgun house to where I am now. And I definitely feel like opportunity exists for everybody. And when I say education, it was me applying to a different high school and trying to get in that and college and all of these other things and certifications and things. But I do just want to say, right, to anybody that's out there, it's attainable. Definitely, if you have any questions or anything, the data guys are here. Carlos, if you want to drop my contact information as well, please feel free to do that. I do a lot of work with young people as well and internships and all of that and making the opportunity accessible because I'm a firm believer in seeing is believing, right? It was me seeing the homes of those chemists and doctors and lawyers back in the day and being invited to the golf club or to the golf course and to the country club and all of that. And so seeing that and believing that I could too be in those places. And now I am in those places. And so, yes, I definitely want this to ring out to anybody that is young and thinking about or having any doubts around this field as well.
Excellent. There's a will, there's a way. The only thing stopping is I can't want it for you more than you want it for yourself.
Exactly.
If you have that passion and want to go, like my whole thing is like, man, I love putting rocket fuel in people and seeing how far they fly.
Yeah.
I'm with you on that. And thank you again. We'll catch you guys next time. All the links and everything will be in the description. And definitely connect with the data guys and D. And they're doing this awesome stuff in community. So tap in, guys. See you next time. Peace.